Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Prog podcast, a special episode. We've done two of these before. The big 70s records turning 50. We're back to hit 1974. The three of us have done all three, right? Geoff and Mike. Welcome back, Mike.
Yep. Hey.
Good to have you. We just realized, actually, Geoff called it that we had forgotten to get to the 1974 one. So good call on that, especially before you get really busy, Mike, that we have some time to do this. Well, you have some downtime, but I guess we should ask you just sort of quickly, generally, how things are going, what's been going on with you and all that.
Well, I'm in full on DT mode, really. You know, every time I come on here and see you guys, you know, you're usually juggling 3-4 different bands and tours, but no, I'm in full on focused DT mode. So yeah, as you know, we're working on the album now and it's going great. The writing is done. My drum tracks are done. Guitars are done. So this week we're in Bassland. I'm home at the moment, so I'm kind of jumping back and forth between the studio as needed. I'm not there 100% of the time, but you know I'm going to go back for keyboards in a few weeks, and then we're going to start the vocals. I think next month. So yeah, you know, it's a long process. I haven't spent this time much time making an album in a long time because usually.
Right.
You know, NMB or Flying Colors or whatever, you kind of, you know, get together, do the writing and the tracking, and everybody does it at home. But Dream Theater is still like old school where, you know, the band is in the studio the whole time. And it's not like anybody's doing anything at home separately. We do it all together, coming in one at a time to work and record. So, yeah, it's a longer process than I've had in quite some time. But it's great. You know, it's the album is, I can't give away much details, but we are all just really, really excited about it, really proud of it, and just can't wait to unleash some info, but I can't do that just yet.
No. Yeah, we won't hound you for anything. That's really exciting, though. I mean, that does sound like a lot more fun than having to sit there and cram in like 2 days, all this crazy writing, that you really have a chance to sit and pick out stuff you really like and work on it and that kind of stuff. That's gotta be cool.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, it's the old way, you know, it's the way I always made records with Dream Theater. I just hadn't done it that way in so long, but it is good. And the process is really detailed this way. You know, all these other bands and projects, everyone kind of just does their own thing on their own time at their own place. But this really gives a real unified kind of band vibe. Even like a couple of weeks ago, James flew back out, came down from Japan, and we spent time collaborating on vocal melodies, so lyrics can be written, you know, to those melodies, which is kind of the way the process is in Dream Theater. So yeah, it's nice to just be a part of each one of these steps, like the old days. You know, it's been a while since I made a record this way.
Yeah, pretty cool.
And lots of tour dates springing up already. You've made a lot of South Americans happy recently.
Yeah, well, so far just the Brazilians, but there is more to come for South America as well. But yeah, the European tour is selling amazingly well. I mean, the tickets are going so fast, and we're still 5 months away at this point. So yeah, it's obviously going to be a very successful tour. And then Brazil was announced, and more South American dates on their way, and U.S. dates coming soon as well. So yeah, stay tuned for that.
Oh, it was really funny when you posted the Come to Brazil thing, which I know that's always the first thing that everyone says when you post tour dates. But then sure enough, the comments were all like, come to Chile, come to like it was all the other countries.
Anytime tour dates are announced, like I just have to ignore the comments because all they are come to Chile, come to Alaska, come to Indonesia, you know.
People have to know. It's not like you don't want to do it. You know what I mean? It's like, we'll get there eventually.
Yeah, of course.
It's funny.
I'm curious as well, starting in London, was that a deliberate thing or was it just how the schedule worked?
Well, we knew we wanted the first show to be in a major market because we figured people are going to come from all over the world to witness opening night and the first show together. You know, it'll be almost 15 years by the time we get on stage together. So we knew it had to be London or Paris or Amsterdam. We talked a little bit about New York. That was the obvious first show, but there were technicalities that made it different. I think management and our agent wanted us to start with a full European leg. And for reasons I won't bore you with the technicalities, it just made sense to start in London. For many reasons. So yeah, it would have been nice to kick off at home in New York. And now that we've announced these shows, we can't add anything before then because everybody's banking on London as the first show, so we can't do a warm-up show in a club or play a surprise show in New York because everybody is banking on London as the first one. So we had to commit to that,
Yeah.
Like Fish had that problem a couple of weeks ago where he announced his last show. He's doing his final tour and he announced the last one and then he added one on at the end and it's like,
that's cheating.
Yeah, no, people were mad. People were mad. All right, so thanks for the little bit of info. I'm sure that'll get aggregated somewhere. But anyway, let's go ahead and dive in. So we picked 15 total albums. We're each going to talk about 5 in the sort of round robin order. And I guess, let's see, the first one I have here is, Gentle Giant, Power and the Glory. I'll go first with that one. That's on my list of albums to talk about. Gentle Giant's always an interesting one for me. I mean, it's a band that I always kind of struggle with really enjoying the records because I find they lack a little bit of melody that I like in my music, but the technicalities and the risks that they take and the musicality and all that is amazing. I mean, there's no denying like they were innovators and everything. Lots of bands still copy their stuff, right? Even to this day. So this was their 6th studio album that was released in September of 1974. Some notable tracks, Proclamation, which is a really popular song by them, is on there. Playing the Game is another one. The album cover is iconic with the with the card and everything. Short album, only 37 minutes, which is interesting. And I think they were maybe pressured. My understanding is they were pressured to write some hit singles, I guess, at that time. But they ended up with maybe one of their more complicated records, is how it's sort of explained. I mean, you guys have any thoughts on this one?
Actually, to be honest, I'm not totally familiar with that. There's certain Gentle Giant albums, kind of the most famous ones are the ones that I've dabbled in, but I'm not the biggest Gentle Giant aficionado. So to be honest, I'm not familiar with this one that much.
Yeah, no, I think it's, again, I'm a bit like you, Roy. There's some of it I really like. Others of it passes me by. I think this is probably a really complete one. And I think, sometimes there can be so much variety in their albums that it's really hard to kind of find a thread through it. I think this one's probably has enough kind of mixture of kind of fun, quirky bits and accessible kind of slightly more normal songs. Yeah. So it's if I had to pick one of their albums, it would either be this one or Octopus, I think, probably.
Yeah. No, it's a fun record. I mean, again, just over 30 minutes, you can get in and out of this thing pretty quick, and they throw so much into every song. It's insane. Yeah, worth checking out if you haven't heard this one. But yeah, it's a notable one that I think we had to sort of kick this off with. Geoff, I think you're next.
Okay, Relayer. I mean, I'm kind of guessing that most people listening to this podcast have probably at least tried this album at some point. Obviously, it comes after Tales from Topographic Oceans. It comes after Rick Wakeman left the band and they brought in Patrick Moraz, who probably made a very significant change to their sound in terms of pushing it in places towards a more technical, frantic jazz rock type album. So it's probably an album that sort of stands slightly on its own in the kind of catalog of Yes for that reason. What was interesting in doing a little bit of research on it is that actually, I mean, it was an incredibly commercially successful album, which you sort of think of prog as being a bit of a niche genre. This was number 4 album in the UK. It was number 5 album in the Billboard charts. They toured for a year after it. On the final show, they headlined the Reading Festival in the UK, to a massive crowd. It obviously reverted to a format somewhat similar to Close to the Edge, with Gates of Delirium being the kind of the one-sided epic. And then To Be Over and the incredible Sound Chaser on side 2. It's funny, I always think of that side as being the first side. I don't know why it's not right, but yeah. So Relay are, you know, a fantastic album, and I suppose the other thing from a drumming perspective, a real showcase for Alan White, you know, throughout lots of parts of this album. You know, really, I think it's where he really comes into his own. This is one of the albums he really comes into his own on.
I love this album. I think it's a great album. And like you said, Geoff, it's very much a standalone kind of album because it was Patrick Moraz's only album, very much the way that like Drama was standalone because it was the only Trevor Horn album for the longest time, not anymore. But yeah, I mean, following after Topographic Oceans, this was a step back on the right track, I think. And like you said, it followed the Close to the Edge formula with a sidelong song and then 2 epics on the other side. Gates of Delirium, I still think, is one of their greatest epics, and Sound Chaser is amazing, as you mentioned, and of course within Gates of Delirium is the climax of Soon, which I think that was probably a single, I think, for this album, but it's such a beautiful section of music, so to me that's one of the highlights of this album.
Yeah,
for sure.
I was surprised to find out over the recent years when we've done podcasts and we did the wheel on Yes. I mean, everybody had this thing ranked really high. I didn't realize it was such a revered album, really, but yeah, it's a good one.
And they were
cool.
I'm sorry not to cut you off, Roy, but they were supposed to be performing this in its entirety, I think, the last year or two. And then they pulled the plug on it, and they backed out of it and ended up not doing it, right?
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't remember what the reason was.
No, I don't think they really said, other than I think it was due to happen over maybe lockdown, I think, and then just by the time time drifted on, they were sort of back in the mode of making some newer music, maybe. So
yeah. All right, cool. Well,
cool.
This is all you, man, Mike.
All right,
Zappa.
That's my man. Well, I was torn because Frank put out 2 albums this year, so it was either going to be my favorite live album of his, Roxy and Elsewhere, or the studio album he put out this year, which is Apostrophe, and I ended up going with Apostrophe. This, to me, this is one of my favorite albums of Frank's, and it comes after 1973's Overnight Sensation. I think starting with Overnight Sensation from the prior year, he began a run of albums that went all the way till the end of the 70s that I think this is his sweet spot. And Apostrophe is one of those albums that's a classic 70s Zappa album. And it's always hard to recommend a Zappa album to somebody because they're all so eclectic, so different. But this is a good starting point. If you don't know Frank's music very well, this particular album is a definite good starting point. The first side alone is an absolute classic album side. You have the Don't Eat the Yellow Snow kind of sweet, and then the album, the side ends with Cosmic Debris, which is an all-time classic Zappa song. So side 1 alone is a great starting point if you don't know Frank's music. But then side B has Apostrophe, has Uncle Remus, has Stinkfoot, and this band is amazing. You had you have Ainsley Dunbar, Ralph Humphreys, who both play drums on the live Roxy and Elsewhere album. But you also have George Duke on this, Jack Bruce on bass. So this was a real turning point where Frank was kind of moving away from the Mothers of Invention stuff and getting to be more of a solo act. And he started that with, like I said, with Overnight Sensation, continue with this. Roxy and Elsewhere is a classic album. From here, he did One Size Fits All, and then Chic Your Booty and the Joe's Garage album. So this whole era, there's a five-year window starting around this period that is just classic Zappa. If you're not familiar with it, it's a good starting point.
I remember, I mean, I wouldn't be a big Zappa aficionado, but you might remember the day, the High Voltage Festival in Victoria Park in London. And I was along at that and had sort of made my way around various places, been a bit exhausted, camped down at the Prog stage, and Zappa Plays Zappa came on. I wasn't really that kind of into it. I was sort of taking a break, but I totally got drawn into that. And I remember the track that I went, oh my goodness, what's that one? I have to find it. Was Cosmic Debris was the one that kind of really stood out for me in that set list. I think you were hanging out somewhere.
I think I watched that whole show.
I
think I watched that show from the monitor desk on the side of the stage.
Yeah.
Dweezil and Zappa Play Zappa toured with Dream Theater the year before, and I would watch them every single night. I even went up to play with them many times. I sat in with them for 4 or 5 different songs throughout the leg. And I mean, Zappa is one of my all-time biggest heroes, so Dweezil doing that Zappa Plays Zappa tour and was just the perfect tribute. And I loved it each and every night, watched it every single night when they toured with us.
Yeah, I don't know this album like at all, so I'm gonna have to. I will go and check it out. I will
just
this one out and,
just the opening suite of "Don't Eat the Yellow Snow." It's a 4 or 5 song suite. It's
I love that.
It's classic.
That's very cool. Great title. He always had the best titles. All right, so let's see what I got. So we have a lot of. I mean, you're talking when you think of these early '70s records. There's so many amazing debuts. And we got a bunch of them on this list that we're talking about. And I guess the Kansas debut is certainly one of them. I mean, everything about this is iconic. The album cover, of course, is recognizable. We talked about this when we did the Wheel of Prog on Kansas. I guess I'll keep referring to these episodes. But, it's an amazing starting point for this band. It sort of establishes what the band was going to be. They're still finding their way a little bit. There's a couple of the more southern rock sounding songs like Can I Tell You. You got the ballady stuff like Lonely Wind. There's some proggy stuff, Journey into Mariabron and Belexes, and it's all over the place, but they really show amazing musicianship, amazing songwriting skills. For a band like that to come out of Topeka, Kansas and drop this really now like sort of iconic debut record, I think was a sign of things to come. And certainly, after this was Song for America, and it started this early run of 70s records. That's just amazing. So, and now they've been on tour celebrating their 50th anniversary for the last couple of years, really. And that they have so many tour dates. I mean, they are just on tour nonstop.
I saw that. Did you see that poster? It's got like about
it's like 100 dates on it, and they just keep adding to it all the time. But I think Rich right now might be the only founding member still playing.
Wow. Wait, Phil Ehart wasn't on the first album?
No, he was,
currently.
but he's not touring anymore.
Oh, right. Okay. Wow. So Rich is the only one that's actually still touring with them.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. But anyway, that's what I got on this one.
Oh, I mean, it's a great album. It wouldn't be, one of my favorite ones, but it's probably that, that kind of element of debut albums slightly finding their way. And as you say, there's sort of the more bluesier sort of, boogie band songs, but then, Alexis, Mother Nature Suite, all that stuff, which just kind of points to the way ahead. And then they really, really nailed it on the next 3 or 4 albums. So, yeah.
I think Kansas were, the first, not the first, but they were one of a handful of bands that kind of became prog, but they were American. Up until this point, all the classic prog bands were English. So, suddenly now in America around 74, you start seeing bands like Kansas or Journey. The early Journey albums were very fusionic, very proggy. Supertramp, Styx. There was this kind of like new wave of American prog that was starting to begin around this period. And this would surely fall into that category.
Yeah, but what was interesting was it was really a mix of, it wasn't like the Yes prog, right? So they would sort of do a lot of different things and then also have these 10-minute songs in there. So they were infusing kind of American styles into it, like you're saying. So yeah, it's good stuff. All right, Geoff, Rick Wakeman.
Journey, yeah, okay. So this is an album that I really love. And again, an album that it was a phenomenal seller at the time. It's again, my research fun fact, it actually outsold Relayer on release.
Wow.
It got placed higher. interesting, dates. Wakeman's last show with Yes on the 23rd of April 74. This album comes out on the 3rd of May 74. So he's been putting all this together all the while they've been touring Topographic Oceans. The record company, he wanted to have orchestra, he wanted to have choir. The record company said, we can't afford to do that in the studio, you're going to have to record it live. So they booked the Royal Festival Hall for 2 shows. The Musicians Union wouldn't let them record both shows without paying the guys double. So the label said, no, you're only recording the second one. And so they basically, the album is kind of it's a one take album.
Wow.
Wow.
With a couple of bits of fixes. The label said you need to put an all-star band behind this, to make it a big thing. Wakeman said, no, I'll put my own band together, and he got the band that plays at his local bar pretty much to play this. But it's obviously based on a story. It's got narration through it. Brilliant musical passages. I've seen this live twice in recent years. Once in the Royal Albert Hall with all the bells and whistles, and it's fantastic. And I saw it more recently where he played it with a smaller band in the London Palladium. And again, a big seller. It got a Grammy nomination. It was a #1 album in the UK. It was #3 album in Billboard.
Wow.
And if you go to any secondhand record shop today, you'll find 18 copies of it, at least in the UK. So very much an album that was big at the time, that kind of the world moved on past. You don't hear it talked about in the same breath as Relay or anything like that. Yet at the time, commercially, it was a big thing. So there we go. Some of the stuff sticks and some of the stuff gets left behind, right?
I think you forget what a big name Rick Wakeman was at this time. Like, I recently saw it was like an advertisement for Yes Songs, the movie, and and had Rick Wakeman's name like almost twice the size of Steve Howe, Chris Squire, Alan White, John Anderson. It was like Rick Wakeman, and then the other 4 guys' names much smaller font, but beneath it, it was really surprising to see that he was really the star at that point.
Yeah, I think that's probably obviously, I mean, I don't think it was probably because of his history, working with Bowie or any of those people, but I think the whole kind of synthesizer thing probably fascinated people, and he was probably at the forefront of that, so famous for the innovation. People say he's one of the first people to actually, stack 3 keyboards on top of each other, or decide that would be the way to do it. I don't know, but
that was also the time of those big rock stars, right? And he was the rock star of Yes. It wasn't, the other guys were very much just musical. Steve Howe was in the background, just sort of playing his guitar parts, but he had the cape and he had the whole thing. So the
Rolls Royces, the 8 divorces.
Imagine the time of where a instrumental keyboard record like this would be in the top 10. That's wild.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Cool. All right, Mike, we got Queen, Sheer Heart Attack.
Well, this is
love this one.
Well, first, it's an amazing album, but this is another one of a band that put out 2 albums, and there's many bands that put out multiple albums.
But we're talking about the other one as well.
Right. So this is Queen 2 came out earlier in the year. I have dates here. Queen 2 came out in March. This comes out in November. So like 6 months later. And there's a lot of bands we're going to talk about. There was 2 Kiss albums, 2 Deep Purple albums, 2 Zappa albums, 2 Crimson albums. So really it was a much different time back then. I guess they were putting out shorter albums, so that kind of helped. But it's amazing when you see how many bands would put out multiple albums in these early years. But Sheer Heart Attack, to me, it's my second favorite Queen album. I mean, Night at the Opera to me is just the quintessential masterpiece. But Sheer Heart Attack is just a personal favorite. You have opening up with Brighton Rock, which is like this Brian May, really cool masterpiece. And also Now I'm Here. Now I'm Here is, to me, one of the greatest Queen songs ever. But you had Brighton Rock, where you had Brian May doing his delay tricks. And then Now I'm Here, which is Freddie Mercury doing his delay tricks. You know, they had these two songs that were like kind of showcases for these echo things that they were doing. And then, of course, you have Killer Queen was the big single off this album. And then my personal favorite is the 3-song trilogy, which I ended up covering with Dream Theater, but Tenement Funster,
Right.
Flick of the Wrist, and Lily of the Valley. I always found that those 3 songs was a really great kind of like Abbey Road kind of thing where they strung together a few different songs to make like this mini suite. And to me, it was always a forgotten kind of group of songs. So once we covered it with Dream Theater, hopefully it gave it some recognition to the Prog fans at least. But yeah, this album is, you know, in true Queen fashion, every album they made back then was so diverse. And, you know, if you look at this, you look at Night at the Opera, Day of the Races, Jazz, all the albums that followed, you know, they were kind of like the Beatles' White Album, where you could have, you know, a ragtime song, then you could have a hard rocker, then you could have a bluegrass thing. You know, they were stylistically different from song to song. And of course, you had all 4 guys, you know, contributing to the writing, and 3 of them singing. So yeah, this is probably like I said, my favorite Queen album besides Night at the Opera.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you have Stone Cold Crazy on this one. I mean,
yeah, of course, it's incredible.
It's just amazing.
Yeah. The fun thing that I found out reading about this, so they mixed the last track to be mixed. Now, bear this in mind in your album recording process, Mike. The last thing to be mixed was Now I'm Here on the 22nd of October. The album was released on the 8th of November.
Wow. That's unbelievable.
It's like, because I think Brian May got sick, like he had an ulcer or something and ended up in hospital, and then he kind of came back and had to finish all the stuff up, and they were really up against it. And within 2 weeks of finishing mixing, the album was in the shops.
That's incredible.
It's hilarious, really.
It's impossible. That's just.
I mean, I wish bands would come back to that, especially nowadays. There's no reason to not. You know, physical products are such a small part of the equation these days. Just finish it and put it out the next week. You know, just drop it online, and a lot of bands are doing that. But it seems when the artists that do that kind of suffer in sales, and you know, without the setup. I know labels still want to have the whole big setup, so I guess there's certain giant artists, you know, the Taylor Swifts of the world, that can just drop an album like that. But for rock bands,
them it doesn't matter, right?
You need some sort of promotional setup. But yeah, there had to have been something very satisfying about like making a record and then releasing it 2 weeks later.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Right. All right. What do we got next? Oh, okay. That's me. ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, El Dorado. Man, I'm just the biggest ELO fan. I love them so much. I love Jeff Lynne so much. Their 4th studio album released in September, a concept album. Of course, it has the cover from The Wizard of Oz with the ruby slippers and the witch. You know, it was, I guess it was the first album where they had sort of like a real, more traditional ELO hit that you know them for, Can't Get Out of My Head, which actually at the beginning of the record. A couple of other songs that are great. Laredo Tornado is really cool. The whole El Dorado finale thing on the second half is great. You know, this is maybe their proggiest album, I guess. I mean, it was. I found this interesting. It was ranked number 43 on Rolling Stone's 50 greatest prog albums of all time, which is interesting to me.
Yeah.
You know, I never really considered ELO a prog band. I come to find out that they were considered kind of an early prog band to me. I guess maybe I knew them from the pop stuff kind of later on first. But I love all these records a lot. I like them better really starting right after this album. Face to Music and onward is where I really start to like their stuff. This album hints at some of that, and I think the concept's cool. There's some moments where it's really cool. I don't think the songwriting is yet there completely to where he got to, like on Face the Music and New World Record and then Out of the Blue. That really starts to be, that's the trio of albums that are just unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, it's just genius stuff, and Jeff Lynne is just he's for me with all the legends of musical geniuses. I just love this stuff so much.
Yeah, I mean, he ended up becoming one of many fifth Beatles,
Yep.
but he's definitely one of them.
Well, this is a bit. I mean, I always think of this as kind of the ELO kind of try to do Sergeant Pepper, because any kind of concept things that they did before were a bit loose, whereas this kind of has, the overture. It's got the kind of finale thing, and then a whole pile of different stuff in between that goes all over the place. But no, I love this album. I played it the other night and just went, oh, there's so many really cool moments just hidden away in sort of the less familiar songs. I guess when what gets, what they, when they tour, and what we tend to hear of the songs, there's a whole other layer to what ELO do, and this is a really good kind of example of all that other stuff that most people probably don't really know and can't get it out of my head. Is it fantastic? So it's just a
song.
Brilliant song.
Yeah.
You covered that too, didn't you? Actually,
yeah, Transatlantic.
I think about Transatlantic.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah, actually, I'm going up to see.
Roy hates the cover CDs. He wouldn't know.
I do know you did that one. I do know you did that one. I'm actually flying up to Philly to see them in September.
Wow.
And then that same weekend, I don't know if are you a Keane fan?
Yeah, totally.
So it's really cool. I found out Keane's playing the next night. So that weekend, it's going to be ELO on Friday and Keane on Saturday, which I'm super excited about.
Well, what's the date of that? If I'm home, I may want to catch ELO.
I want to say September 20th is ELO and the 21st is Keane at the Met.
Wow.
So
I'm going to try to catch that if I can. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me know if you
end
up going there.
Surround Hopes and Fears 20th anniversary.
Nice. I love that album. Is that the one with Bed Shaped, by the way?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Yeah, I think they're playing the whole album on this tour that they're doing, that whole first album. All right, cool. Let's see what we got going on. Deep Purple. Geoff,
it's me. Right? Burn. Okay, yeah. So
another band with two albums. The year started with Burn and ended with Stormbringer.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So again, obviously a big, for a band who had lots of lineup changes, this was a biggie. Ian Gillan left. Roger Glover, I think, was kind of made to leave. The band approached Glenn Hughes to be singing bass player, and I think he joined thinking he was going to be the only singer, and then they went and found David Coverdale. Interesting, again, fun facts about this. The first person they asked was Paul Rodgers. And then they asked John Lawton from Uriah Heep, and amongst the people who they asked was actually Gary Pickford Hopkins, who Connection is one of the singers on Journey to the Center of the Earth. So there you go. Anyway, Coverdale joins, and I was reading in this. So the first thing they said is, right, you got to lose your glasses. So they fitted him up for contact lenses. They then made him take weight loss drugs.
Wow.
To get thinner. So we think that all that stuff is the now. Well, 50 years ago, Deep Purple were doing it. And then they said, the other thing we want you to do is change your name. And he said, I'll do the other two, but not that.
Wow.
And so he remains David Coverdale. I mean, I don't know what you guys feel about it. To me, it's not really the same band that preceded it. But it's a great evolution. Obviously Glenn Hughes brought soul and funk to it, away from that, but yet they maintained that sort of mainstream bluesy sound and stuff like Mistreated. An amazing opening track in Burn, which is just spectacular and has that proggy middle section. Apparently Coverdale had to write 6 sets of lyrics before Ritchie Blackmore was happy with it. The dual vocals the whole way through the album are fantastic, and again make it sound very different from, I guess, what came before. That kind of Stevie Wonder influence in something like Sail Away. Glenn Hughes's voice Gillan obviously did the high kind of pitchy stuff, but Glenn Hughes and to an extent Coverdale did it their own way. It's just packed full of fantastic songs, and gonna give the band a new lease of life after losing at least some iconic members. So yeah, I think it's a great album.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly kept their popularity going. It's weird that Roger Glover was ever not in the band, though. Of all the guys to have.
Yeah, I mean, Purple's one of those bands where the drummer is the only guy that's been there the whole time. Same with Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd with Nick Mason.
Yeah.
But you could say the same about Ian Pace with Purple. He's the only one that's been there from the beginning.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's right.
That's right.
All right, let's see what's next. Oh well, here we go. Another massive debut record.
Some of them are red, some of them are purple. I got a red one.
I know. I was trying to see. I went with the purple.
Yeah. All right. Well, I get to talk about this. I mean, obviously, monumental debut album. Well, monumental in terms of a band's debut. A band coming on the scene. Rush entering the picture here in '74. To become one of the greatest bands of the prog world, if you consider them true prog. But in any case, obviously, this is the starting point. As everybody knows, it's John Rutsey on drums, so it's not Neil. So this is the only album in the Rush catalog with John Rutsey on drums. But it's not the Rush that we come to know years later, but this is definitely a cool starting point. A lot more bluesy, a lot more Zeppelin. This is more in the vein of like Free and Zeppelin and Cream, less prog. The songs are shorter other than Working Man and Here Again, the two songs that close either side. But it's, till the very last show, they still played Working Man. In the Mood was often in the set list. Finding My Way, those are all classics. And this is where it all began. Not much more you can really say about it, but it's a.
Where would you have ranked this album in the wheel of Rush albums?
I mean, it's a D tier. It's funny because so many classic bands that we love, their debuts just aren't there yet. The first Rush album, the first Yes album, the first Genesis album. There's very few bands that nail it right out of the gates. And, Rush, I think they were still finding their sound at this point, too. And then obviously Neil coming in for Fly By Night just evolved the band so quickly into a whole nother thing. But, even Dream Theater's first album, When Dreaming Day Unite, it's just we were, open so many bands, their debuts, they're just not there yet. I think King Crimson is like one of the exceptions, really. But if you look at almost every other classic prog band, they're still finding their feet on those first couple albums.
Just don't let Kyle Graves hear you say that, man.
Yeah.
He's the diehard When Dreaming Day.
That's still his favorite record, I think, by anyone ever.
Have you read or listened to Getty's book?
Yeah, I read it.
Because I'm working my way through it, and it gives a lot. I now understand a lot better why the first Rush album sounds like what it sounds like when you hear of his influences and how everything that they kind of played through and did up to that point. So it helped me make a lot more sense of that album as to why it is what it is. Yeah,
I should have brought it out here. I have a great bootleg vinyl of right after Neil joined, they did a recording session at Electric Lady Studios, I guess in front of an invited audience. So it's pretty much like I think it was recorded late '74 or whenever shortly after Neil joined the band, and it's pretty much playing this whole album but with Neil on drums. So that's my go-to if ever I really want to revisit this first album. I listen to that Electric Lady Studios recording because it's basically this album with Neil on drums.
Wow.
And there's also some great video footage on YouTube that I found recently of them playing at a high school in '74 with John Rutsey. It's like a full 30 or 40 minute set of this lineup playing these songs. And it's interesting that John Rutsey was the speaker. He was the band's spokesman. So between songs,
right. Wow.
John Rutsey is doing the talking and introducing of each song.
Oh wow,
cool.
That's
yeah,
cool.
it's really one of those great YouTube
Check that out.
finds.
Okay, let's let me jump to the next one, and I think okay, so we're going back to this is I think the only band we're featuring twice on this thing because these two albums were just that good. But Queen 2, which you referenced, came out earlier in the year in March. I mean, an amazing second record. We've talked about this before many times, but very proggy, very heavy for them. And of course, it has the iconic cover, which was then later used for the Bohemian Rhapsody video. It's interesting how they split the songs, right? So the first side is the white side, then the black side. The white side featuring mostly Brian May songs. The second side featuring mostly Freddie Mercury songs. Obviously, I mean, I like the Freddie Mercury side. I think some of that stuff is some of the best stuff they ever did. With Ogre Battle, Nevermore, March of the Black Queen, Seven Seas of Rye on there. I mean, it's just amazing stuff. Not a whole lot to say about it really, but I think to me it's in my top maybe 4. I would say 3 or 4 Queen albums. I just love this album. I think it's amazing.
Ogre Battle. To me, it's all about Ogre Battle. It's so cool.
Yeah. I think March of the Black Queen. I can't. Every time I hear that, even now, it's like every time I hear that song, I just can't believe anyone wrote it. Like who could think of that to write it? It's amazing.
But Ogre Battle's the one that you sort of think, it's a very natural kind of guitar song, and yet you can actually hear, like Freddie wrote it, so he probably wrote it on the piano, but it's, it's a brilliant opener. That whole side too, such an eclectic run of stuff, and ending with, the little, Seven Seas of Rye, and Funny How Love. It's a fantastic album for a second album, really is.
Yeah, the jump they took from the first to second, and then even then again to Sheer Heart Attack, it's just so wild. I mean, what a skyrocketing progression, Yeah. All right, Geoff, let's see. Camel.
Okay, yeah. I mean, not a band we probably talk a lot about on the Prog Report, and they wouldn't be a band that I would particularly be into. However, I couldn't help myself but get the 32
That's so
disc.
crazy.
This insane set. It kind of sold out in the first run, and I got major FOMO, and they put a second run out. So I've been working my way through that. I think what I would say is they're probably on the mellower side of prog. They don't have a kind of a an Ian Anderson, Peter Gabriel memorable frontman. They were a bit more serious, a bit more muso. But again, that Rolling Stone, top 100 prog albums, they put it at number 21, which is just amazing. Wow. Because I think commercially, this seems to have done nothing at all when it came out. And again, you have the two, Pete Bardens and Andy Latimer, the two singers. Again, not, kind of over the top vocalists, so it is all quite mellow. And this album's kind of two kind of shorter songs, two instrumentals, and a couple of epics. Lady Fantasy being the big one in it. Andy Ward, the drummer, again, quite, I guess, a notable guy. I think when you listen to this album, you can see where a lot of Marillion's influence kind of came from.
I think he played drums with Marillion for a minute. I think
he did for a period of time. Lots of flute. So very, very much in that sort of pastoral kind of prog type piece, as opposed to very technical music. But Andy Latimer's guitar is, I mean, it's, he's not somebody who's particularly recognized, but, very similar territory to David Gilmour in terms of really beautiful lyrical playing. I've really been enjoying getting into their albums. They probably will never be my all-time favorite band, but, there's a lot of stuff on here that, points to what lots of other bands did and were influenced by in terms of prog. So, yeah, I think it's it's a good one to have on this list.
Do you know the story behind the album cover? I mean, that they copied it from the cigarettes, or what? How did that work out?
Even the
I don't
logo.
know the story there.
Yeah, I mean,
the whole thing is
answer.
like the cigarettes.
Yeah. I'm surprised they got away with that.
Yeah, right.
Let's say, can Wikipedia quickly tell us? No, it doesn't. There we go. Answers on a postcard. Leave it in the comments.
Yeah.
When I think of Camel, I think of Michael Ackerfeld and Opeth. I know
Right,
Michael's a huge Camel fan, and like if you listen to Opeth's the Damnation album, that you could hear a big Camel influence on the mellow side of Opeth for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
All right. Let's.
All right.
Oh, well, here we go. Well, this is
Don't come at me.
debut. So.
All right. Well, I know the Prog purists. I know this is the Prog Report, and this is decisively not a Prog album. But this was on my list, and I have to have this on my list. I mean, to me, which way do I go? I'm always confused going backwards like this. But I mean, yes, it's not a Prog album, but it's one of the most important debuts of this year. I mean, it's crazy that in 1974 we got the debut from Rush and the debut from Kiss and Kansas as well. But in terms of like importance, I think Kiss and Rush were really important. And this is an important album. I mean, love them or hate them, around the mid 70s, Kiss were part of like pop culture. And for me, as a teenager in New York, I got caught up in it. And the first 6 Kiss albums were huge for me. And this is a classic. I mean, of all the Kiss albums, this one, it's a classic. Everything is on here. Strutter, Deuce, Black Diamond. I mean, Nothing to Lose, Firehouse. It's Cold Gin. It's a classic from start to finish. I love the fact that it established all, not all 4, but 3 of them as singers, because at this point, Peter Criss was still a main third of the vocal splits. It was Gene, Paul, and Peter. You listen to a song like Nothing to Lose or Black Diamond, where Peter's vocals are so important. But this is one of the classic quintessential Kiss albums. And even if you're not a fan, and even if you're a Prog purist and you don't want to hear about Kiss on this podcast, you can't ignore and deny the importance of this album on pop culture and music history. So I stand by it. I'm still a Kiss fanatic, especially for the 70s Kiss. And this is probably the go-to classic album. This and Destroyer,
yeah.
But yeah,
I was gonna say Destroyer is the other one that has all the hits on it. But look, I'm a huge Kiss fan. It was my first love band, growing up. When I was really young, I had the Gene Simmons doll, and the whole thing. I mean, it was my first concert. Was the Creatures of the Night tour. So even going into the 80s, it was super influential. I have all the albums, even through the later stuff. So. I still, not my favorite stuff to listen to, anymore. I think, you sort of move on and discover more elaborate things and stuff like that. But I still think their music is great. I've seen them a dozen times live and all that. I'm dying to do a wheel of rock for Kiss albums. Yeah. And we're going to do it one day and everybody can just get mad if they want. But I think it would be a lot of fun.
I think the A and the B tiers are the first 6 albums. That's easy, right?
Right.
That's an easy one. There's
probably way too many to put in D is the problem.
Yeah, that's the problem.
As you get towards later. But, it's good stuff. It's fun stuff.
So, I love the cover, too. It's almost like Meet the Beatles. It's just the 4 faces. And I always found, you're going to think I'm crazy, but I always found really close similarities between early Kiss and the Beatles. The Beatles were 4 incredibly strong personalities. All of them sharing the vocals and writing. And, you have Gene.
Ace is George Harrison, right?
Exactly. Sort of, Peter is Ringo. Gene and Paul are John and Paul. And then even down to the first album cover looking like Meet the Beatles or With the Beatles, whichever version you're talking about. But
didn't they sort of, I think they've said before that they started as wanting to be that was their major influence for Gene and Paul was the Beatles.
Definitely. Yeah.
I'd never made that connection, but it totally is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Why do we know why Peter Criss looks like a mouse?
Ah, that was his
They're still
original
working out the artwork.
cat design. Yeah.
Yeah, still working out the
And of course,
artwork there.
I first heard most of the songs on this album on Kiss Alive.
Yeah.
And again, like nearly every song on this album is on Kiss Alive. Yeah, and I kind of, and hearing the album later, it kind of was a little bit, they're a bit flatter, because they're studio versions. But yeah, I mean, brilliant songs.
Well, yeah, no question. I agree 1,000% with that. I think the production on this is very dated, and it got worse with Hotter Than Hell, which is, by the way, and they're another band that put out 2 albums this year, because the first album came out February, Hotter Than Hell came out in October, so another band with 2 albums that year.
Yeah,
but
Hotter Than Hell truly sounds terrible.
Oh, like, the drum sound,
it really does.
The snare drum sounds like a paper bag. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So yeah, these songs really came alive, no pun intended, on Alive.
Yeah, for sure. That's good stuff. Well, I love it. All right, cool. So this is my last one that I'm bringing up. So I saved this one for last because it is absolutely one of my all-time favorite albums. I love Supertramp. In the sort of the bands that I got to talk about here, I maybe put Queen and ELO a little bit higher for me because those are maybe in my top 5 or 10 favorite bands. Supertramp maybe not is at that level completely, but this album absolutely is. It's just an absolute masterpiece. Every song is amazing. It has really the best, because all the hits, all the great songs that everyone knows are the Roger Hudson songs, really. But on this album, Roger Davies had amazing songs. And Asylum is maybe my favorite Supertramp song, which is one of his. And it's a totally obscure, weird track, but I just love it. Bloody Well Right, School is on here, Hide in Your Shell, Dreamer. The title track is epic. The whole thing is amazing. It was their breakthrough album. Yeah, as time has gone on for me, as I've gotten older and I keep going back to this album, it truly has become one of my all-time favorite records. And going back to that Rolling Stone list, which I found again too, this is not a band I ever thought of as prog. I mean, at all, ever. I thought they were a pop band and this was their one cool album. That I had never thought about it any other way. But Rolling Stone had it as the number 27 greatest prog album.
Wow.
Again, I don't know why we keep referring to this Rolling Stone list, because usually their lists are terrible, but it's just interesting.
Well, it's interesting to see what like mainstream media think is prog,
Right, exactly. Like I don't know if Dream Theater's in their list or not, who knows what they do with those lists.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Crime of the Century. If you haven't listened to Supertramp, I mean, this album is absolutely one to get.
Again, probably a bit like Queen and Kiss to an extent as well. Multiple, it wasn't a case of the hits were all written by one guy, obviously those 2 guys. And I think, isn't this one of the albums where they like alternate, tracks?
Yeah, everyone is back. And I'm sorry, I think I said Roger Davies, which I do all the time. It's Rick Davies. I always mess up his name.
Yeah. And again, they tended to sing their own songs as well, which was not quite a Queen thing, but certainly Kiss as well did that. So.
They had a Lennon McCartney thing where they attributed each song to both of them, I think, for some dumb copyright nonsense.
Yeah.
They would have been the second prog band with 2 Rogers if his name was Roger. Can you name the first? Who was the most?
Pink Floyd.
Pink
Floyd. Because Sid was Roger.
Exactly.
All right, cool.
There we go. I win the prize.
Yeah. All right, Geoff. Well, of course we got this.
Yeah. Well, The Lamb. I mean, there. Yeah. Again, what can be said about The Lamb?
I mean, how many times have we talked about this album on our podcast?
That hasn't already
it's
been
just
said.
Every other podcast.
The fun thing that I did learn about this and reading up on it was this: that Gabriel in the middle of the album went to work with William Friedkin, who I think, if my timing's right, was probably just off the back of The Exorcist and probably the hottest certainly one of the hottest kind of film properties. What I hadn't realized was he did actually properly leave the band to do that, and that the band were sort of left with all this music and we're trying to work out, what do we do and should we carry on? And then I think Friedkin went, oh gosh, if it's going to break up the band, no, go back. I guess, it's a concept album with a story that's completely, bizarre, not particularly followable, but the created a bit of animosity in the band because Gabriel said, it's my vision, I want to write all the lyrics, and that made some other band members grumpy. They recorded the backing tracks in 2 weeks. Again, the speed of how things were done in those days, and with the band mostly working together and creating jams, and I suppose doing things that they probably ended up being foundational in the latter years of the band. Like I read about Fly on the Windshield, them saying, well, let's imagine a boat going down the River Nile. So and they kind of made a piece of music that sounded like that. But it's got the pastoral side. It's got some quite sort of back in New York City is probably about, or NYC, sorry, is probably the most kind of aggressive kind of Genesis track of that era. The weird experimental stuff like The Waiting Room. You've got tracks that are pure Genesis classics: The Lamb, Fly on the Windshield, In the Cage, Carpet Crawlers, Slipper Man, all the weird stuff like Grand Parade of Life as Packaging, and some of the stuff that's kind of hidden away that's a bit more kind of Chamber of 32 Doors anyway. The Lamia, that's a bit more kind of mellower, that probably doesn't get the same amount of recognition. Is it too long? Maybe. I read that they actually decided at the start that it was going to be a double album, before they'd written anything. But I think because there'd been so much, Selling England by the Pound's a really long album, and they said, well, to give everybody a chance to get their stuff on, it's going to be a double album, whatever it is. But the Hypnosis cover, completely iconic. Last year I got the chance to see one of the tribute bands do the full stage show with the slides and the costumes, which was just amazing to see, and I'm sure mind-blowing to see back then. It's in my top 3 Genesis albums, but again, it's sort of one of those ones that it's completely unlike anything else, and iconic album. Really.
Yeah, what more can be said? I agree. It's in my top 3. I like Foxtrot and Selling England more than this, but this is just a legendary album, and I think it would have, if it was cut down to a single, it might be my favorite, because stuff like In the Cage, Fly in the Windshield, Slipperman, those are amazing songs, and if you consolidated all this to one album, it might top Foxtrot or Selling England for me, but yeah, there's no question it's so iconic, and it's a landmark album also because it was Gabriel's last. So, and it looks like we're never going to get that official reunion. It looks probably never going to happen. So this is it.
Yeah.
And
not anymore.
Yeah.
They came close. They came close to almost doing it. They had a discussion about it. That was as far as it got.
Well, they did. They did do one reunion show in '82, I believe, in England.
Yeah, for Peter Gabriel's.
Although Hackett only joined at the end of that. He only came on for the encore, I think. He got his flight get held up or something.
Is that right?
But, oh yeah.
I actually I have a great rehearsal, a bootleg of rehearsals from I guess the Hammersmith Odeon or the Apollo, and they're playing all these tunes. They actually do. Genesis even did a version of Salisbury Hill at that reunion show. But yeah, so the reunions the 3 Prog reunions that you always wanted that we didn't get were Gabriel with Genesis, Fish with Marillion, Pink Floyd with Roger Waters. And in all 3 cases, we did get a one-off from each of them. Genesis did it once, Marillion did it once, and Floyd did it once. So that's all we get. But at least. Yep.
Oh, well. All right, last one, big one.
There you go. And once again, once again, another band with 2 releases this year, because they had put out, I think Starless and Bible Black came out earlier in the year, and then this came out in October. And, this is interesting. Another cover like Meet the Beatles or the first Kiss album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually Queen too as well.
Yeah,
really.
Queen too, exactly.
Yeah.
Crazy. So there's 3 albums this year with almost
Everyone was
identical
copying
covers.
the Beatles all the time.
Yeah. But I mean, look, this is another album that's been talked about to death, and it's one of my 3 favorite Crimson albums. Actually, my favorite Crimson albums go by era. So of course you had in the Court of the Crimson King was started Prog in '69. You have this in '74, and then the '80s versions. Discipline's another one of my favorites. So that's the '80 versions. But this is kind of the end of the first era of Crimson. It began with Court of Crimson King in '69, and it concluded with Red in '74. It's a 5-year period, and this was the last album they made, or Fripp made, before retiring the band for about 5 or 6 years, and then coming back in the '80s with a different transformation. But this lineup, I mean, Fripp, Bruford, and John Wetton, amazing. I mean, 3 iconic songs on here. Obviously, the title track, one more Red Nightmare is a classic, and then of course Starless, to me, possibly one of the greatest songs of all time by any band. It's just absolutely goosebumps, that song, and I mean, it's a classic. It's a classic album. There's only 5 songs, and kind of the end of this not only the end of this era for Crimson. I think between this and The Lamb Lies Down on Broadway, this was kind of the end of the first era of Prog, because I think '74, Genesis is about to go into their Phil Collins era. Yes is about to go into Tormato and Going for the One, and Crimson wraps up here for a time being. So this is kind of the end of Prog. ELP is about to go into Love Beach. So it feels like between this and The Lamb, it's kind of like the end of the first chapter of Prog.
I'm just looking sort of at the albums from '75 on Google here to see what's. Yeah, it's not a lot of famous Prog bands. There's a couple, but it's amazing stuff.
It's all starting to, like, if you look at my favorite album list of each one of these years, this is kind of the end of the Prog era, because '75, it's more classic rock. It's more Zeppelin, Floyd, and they were, when you look at '74, there was no Zeppelin album, there was no Pink Floyd album, there was no Paul McCartney album. So this was kind of the transitional year. Start by mid '70s, everything is starting to be a little bit more classic rock.
'75 is Born to Run, Captain Fantastic, the Fleetwood Mac debut, Physical Graffiti, Toys in the Attic. So it's heavy classic rock, but awesome stuff. I mean, we may still do this podcast, just go classic rock. I
actually just got my Prog magazine. Look what's on the cover.
Yeah.
So there we go.
It's fun. I saw Bill Bruford, who I don't know if it's Bill or somebody that handles his socials, but he just posted, I think yesterday, about the fact that Red, is on the cover of the new Prog magazine, and he made an interesting comment, or whoever posted for him made an interesting comment, that Prog magazine should really start considering putting more modern Prog bands on the cover. He was almost like apologetic about a photo that was taken 50 years ago being on the cover of Prog magazine in 2024.
That's because the older artists sell the magazine. That's
right.
Still,
it's like put Floyd on it, put Tull on it, and it sells. Put newer people on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Not so much. I've just been thinking. We've been a thread that's been running through this. There is a Spotify or something playlist waiting to be made entitled Mike Portnoy Covers the Best of 1974, because there must be at least 7 or 8 songs.
Yeah, well, I mean,
between the Queen medley, Starless, the Rush, the Working Man tribute.
Well, even just from this album, I did Starless with Neil and Randy, but Neil and Randy also did One More Red Nightmare as well. So we covered 2 out of the 2 out of the 5 on this album. Yeah, I mean,
Or was it?
you could probably say that about
Was it
any
Red,
year.
or was it one more Red Nightmare, or was it Red? Was
No,
it
we did
Red?
one more Red Nightmare on the third cover to cover album.
Okay.
But yeah, what else? I mean,
have you recorded any Kiss covers? I don't remember. Have you?
I've done a lot of those Kiss songs, like with Metal Allegiance, but I don't know if I've recorded any Kiss songs.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
That's
I mean,
always
there's a lot of. I mean, I don't know if you want to do honorable mentions, but there was a lot of.
Can't get it out of my
there's
head.
so many
as well.
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, there's a bunch of honorable mentions. You want to go ahead and kick some up?
And Burn, I did Burn with Sons of Apollo. Anyway, we could go all day with that. But some honorable mentions. I mean, I had it's not really Prog, but it's not the first, but the Big Star album. I don't know if you follow them at all.
Yeah,
like power pop and stuff like that. I mean, they put out a couple of classic albums, and the Radio City album came out this year in '74, and also power pop kind of stuff. Sweet's Desolation Boulevard is a favorite, and this was no pun intended. The sweet spot for Sweet was like '74 was, Burn on the Flame and Fox on the Run, and all the classic stuff was pretty much on the Desolation Boulevard album.
Yep. Diamond Dogs was the other one. I had, again, not quite Prog, but Diamond Dogs, Roxy Music, Country Life, and one of my favorite Neil Young albums, On the Beach. I know not everybody's a massive Neil Young fan, but that's one of my favorites of his.
He had Elton John, Caribou, which was
indeed. To me, Caribou was like Goodbye Elbrick Road was mammoth, epic masterpiece, and then '75 he's going to come out with Captain Fantastic, which is also a masterpiece in my opinion. So Caribou was kind of lost in between. I think of Caribou, 2 massive songs on it though. Bitch Is Back,
right?
And I believe Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me
Don't
is
Let
also
the Sun Go Down
as well. So
yeah,
it's kind of like the album itself gets lost in the shuffle, but I mean, just those 2 tracks within themselves are incredible.
Yeah. Indeed, and actually another one for the Mike Portnoy covers 1974 album or playlist is Pretzel Logic. So Ricky Don't Lose That Number was 1974.
I covered that on bass. I play bass on that one.
And then if you want to go more classic rock, you got Eric Clapton, 461 Ocean Boulevard, Joni Mitchell, Court and Spark, which is a big record. It's Only Rock and Roll by the Stones.
John Lennon's Walls and Bridges is
that's there.
I think that's a forgotten classic because when I think of Lennon, I always think of the Plastic Ono Band and the Imagine albums, but a couple of years ago I dug back into Walls and Bridges and was really surprised at how well it stood up and
that's not one that's mentioned much ever really that I can recall.
Well, it will be later this. Isn't there a reissue of that coming?
They just announced the Mind Games one, but hopefully Walls and Bridges.
Oh, sorry, it's Mind Games. Yeah, you're right. No, you're right. Of course.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, I mean, we covered a lot of great albums. Always fun to chat, man. These are a blast to do, and always good to get you in when you have some time off. I know you're not going to have much time off soon. No. It's going to be a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, I can't wait.
But all right, so we'll keep our eyes and ears peeled for some more news from the Dream Theater world. So I imagine pretty soon, and. Good luck with the tour if we don't get to talk to you before then,
Thank you. Yeah, it's real exciting. I mean, we couldn't be happier with the album, and I couldn't be more excited to tour. I mean, that opening night in London I've been dreaming about it for a long time, so it's going to be pretty surreal. It's going to be incredible.
How'd we do on the set list?
I won't give anything away, but I love that episode. Yeah, for those that haven't seen it. Prog Report did a great episode guessing the Dream Theater set list for the upcoming tour. Definitely worth checking out. You guys did great, actually. I'm not going to give anything away, but I already have written the main set list in my mind, and I've already submitted the tracks to the guys. So I know what you got right and what you didn't get right, and I'll just say
that's gonna be a lot of fun. Yeah, we'll wait and find out.
You guys did good. A lot of good stuff.
We want to do some more episodes picking set lists, so we're gonna, that may be something we'll just make up, random bands that
Right,
maybe
yeah.
aren't even touring anymore or something.
That was a lot
we'll
of fun
see.
to watch.
Yeah. All right, man. All right. Well, don't forget to subscribe to YouTube channel, follow us on our socials, progport.com and everything. More Wheel of Prog episodes coming. We just did a Fates Warning one, which was a lot of fun. And so keep an eye out for more of those. We got a new one coming soon. And check out Dream Theater stuff coming soon. Stay up to date on all the news. And we'll see you guys later. Hey, thanks for checking out the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on all our socials and progport.com. And we'll see you all again real soon. Thanks.